Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show that helps you get informed quickly by exploring the sources you send our way.
And today we're continuing our journey through Scotland's past. This is the next deep dive in our series on the ancient clans.
That's right, we're heading back to Argyll, specifically focusing on Clan MacInnes.
Our insights today come straight from excerpts of a book called Clan MacInnes, part of the Ancient Clans of Scotland series.
And, before we really get into it, if this kind of history grabs you, or maybe you know someone who'd love it, this book really is a fantastic gift.
It is a great way to connect with that heritage.
Absolutely. And we've put a link to buy it right there in the description for you. Easy to find.
So when we talk about clans, well, the word clan in Gaelic just means children. It's basically about kinship, these large extended family groups.
Exactly. But we won't dwell too much on the general what is a clan idea today. The sources you shared are really zeroed in on one specific clan.
Clan MacInnes.
So our mission today is to use this book to explore their particular history, their traditions, the lands they held, and some pretty amazing stories.
Okay, let's dive in. Origins first.
Sounds good. The name itself, MacInnes.
Right, it's from the Gaelic MacInnes, meaning son of Angus.
But what's interesting, and the source points this out, is how Angus gets interpreted, sometimes as unique strength or even one choice.
Like resilience is baked right in from the name, isn't it?
Exactly. A powerful start.
And their traditional roots, they're traced back to Fergus Mór MacCirca. We're talking 6th century king of Dalriada.
So really ancient lineage links them right back to the early Scots kingdom in Argyll, maybe even Pictish ancestry too.
Puts them among the earliest established families in that part of the Highlands.
They start showing up more clearly in records around the medieval period, specifically connected with the Morvern Peninsula.
Yeah, Western Argyll by the 13th century.
Morvern. Sounds pretty rugged.
Oh, it is. But strategic, too. The source describes them as a recognized local power there. Not dominant, maybe, but important locally. And being coastal gave them trade access.
And they managed to back Robert the Bruce during the Wars of Independence and, well, survive it all. Pragmatic, the source calls them.
Definitely. Their early chiefs around the 13th century seemed to rule more through clan bonds and looking after the land rather than just force. Loyalty was key in Morvern.
Then later, during the big lordship of the Isles period under the MacDonalds.
They were likely allies or retainers, close to that center of power.
But crucially, when the lordship collapsed in 1493.
They managed to stay fairly independent, at least for a while. This adaptability, navigating those shifting powers, seems to be a theme for them.
Yes, the source highlights how they engaged with the lowland systems, the crown, while still holding on to their Highland identity. A balancing act.
And that's likely what helped them persist through some very turbulent centuries.
Even much later, with the Jacobite risings, the source suggests they were involved, but perhaps with discretion. Quiet resilience seems to be their way.
It's described as a legacy of subtle strength, cultural endurance. And they are recognized today, aren't they?
They are. By the Standing Council of Scottish Chiefs, and there's an active international society. Shows how that legacy endured.
Now, maybe just a quick word on the typical clan structure the source mentions, just the basics.
Sure, kinship, looking after the land, being ready to defend it, that was the core.
You had the chief Ansinard, then chieftains for different branches, tacksmen managing lands and tenants.
Bards, the Shawneckis keeping the history alive through stories and poems. And then the everyday clanspeople, the crofters, the craftsmen, a whole system.
But, and this is a really key point the source emphasizes for the MacInneses, their story with chiefs is different.
So?
Well, the formal line of chiefs, it's believed to have ended a long time ago.
Yes. The source puts this disruption way back in the mid-14th century.
Apparently, the chief and his sons were assassinated. The story goes it was John of Islay, the Lord of the Isles. Pretty brutal.
A major break in continuity.
And critically, no formal successor was ever recognized after that. So the clan's central leadership kind of went dormant. They lost that cohesive political force.
So no continuous line of chiefs like some other clans have.
Right. But the source does mention important figures later on who acted as leaders in practice. Heads of branches, regional figures.
People like John MacInnes or Donald MacInnes of Kinlochlein.
Exactly. And then, maybe even more importantly, figures in the 19th and 20th centuries, like Reverend Donald MacInnes, Colin MacInnes in Nova Scotia.
Donald Gore MacInnes in Edinburgh.
Yes. These people were vital for cultural preservation, for reviving that clan spirit, especially for those who'd emigrated. Even without official recognition from the heraldic authorities, they kept the identity alive.
That's fascinating. Identity surviving even when the formal structure is broken. Let's talk about their lands then. Ground it in geography. Morvern is central, isn't it?
Absolutely central. The source paints it as this rugged, beautiful peninsula. Places like Kinlochaline, Lochaline, they're deeply tied to the MacInnes story. Controlled key points like the Sound of Mull,
And they had those early ties to the Lords of the Isles operating within the MacDonald sphere.
which gave them some protection, some status. But things changed dramatically after the lordship fell.
This is where Clan Campbell comes in strongly.
Very strongly. The source details how the Campbells expanded into Morvern, often pushing the MacInneses out.
Reducing them from landowners to tenants on their own ancestral ground. The source calls it a quiet yet painful erasure.
Yeah, not one big battle, but this gradual, relentless pressure. It left deep scars, stories carried across the sea.
And their main base was Kinlochaline Castle. I love the other name for it.
Castile and I'm.
Castle Butter. What's the story there?
Well, the legend is it was paid for with butter, not cash. Maybe reflects local wealth, or it's just a great tale. But the castle itself was vital defense, justice, trade, overlooking the Sound.
The source also mentions other spots where MacInnes families held on, like Drimnin and Lawdale.
Yes, keeping the name present in the area.
But the pressure continued, didn't it? Jacobite aftermath, the clearances.
Devastating. Those really hit the remaining MacInnes territories hard in the 18th and 19th centuries, forcing so many families off the land for good.
And that's when large-scale emigration really took off, especially to Nova Scotia.
Hugely important destination, Cape Breton Island particularly. The source talks about communities like Malagawach, Boysdale, becoming real centers for the MacInnes diaspora.
But even with people forced so far away, that connection to Argyll remained strong.
Incredibly strong. The stories, the sense of descent from Dalriada, it all traveled with them.
And Kinlochaline Castle itself, it's been partly restored, a symbol of that resilience.
It is. And other sites, too, like Dunmerchide and Older Fort, or the houses at Drimnin and Lawdale, reminders of their long history there.
So branches of the clan. The source mentions the main line, MacInnes of Kinlochaline, linked to the castle.
And then cadet branches, like from Drimnin and Lawdale, they were influential, especially in the diaspora story.
And associated names, the Seps. MacAngus is the obvious one.
Yeah, just an anglicized version.
Right.
Then you get regional variations like McNeish or McNeese. McMaster is sometimes linked, but this source says probably a separate clan.
Okay, let's talk symbols. The crest badge is quite striking.
It is. A hand holding a crosslet fichy, that's a cross with points on the ends and pointed at the bottom.
What does that symbolize?
The source suggests spiritual devotion, but also martial readiness. Defending the faith, maybe planting the cross in the ground as a rallying point. Vigilance.
And the plant badge?
Traditionally, the Scots pine, symbolizing strength, longevity, resilience, though the source adds a note. It's not officially confirmed by the Lord Lion. And speaking of official recognition, a key point the source makes tied to that broken chiefship. Clan MacInnes is armigerous.
Armigerous, what does that mean exactly?
Basically because there's no officially recognized chief today, the clan as a whole doesn't have officially registered coats of arms with the heraldic authorities.
I see. But there are historical symbols associated with them.
Yes. Motifs like crosses, hands, maybe ships reflecting their coastal life appear historically.
And a pipe tune.
The source doesn't list one exclusively for them, but mentions Lochaber No More is often played at gatherings. That famous lament for lost Highland homes really resonates with their history of displacement.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
And the chief's title, even though it's dormant.
It's Sean Synid McAnghais, means head of the clan of the sons of Angus. Honors that ancient link.
What about a motto? The source gives Guth de Agus and Ri.
Gaelic for, by the grace of God and the king. The source explains it as showing loyalty to both divine power and the sovereign. Likely emerged after the lordship of the Isles fell, perhaps a way to signal allegiance to the Scottish crown then, used ceremonially now.
And a battle cry, did they have one?
No single historical one is recorded specifically for them in the source. They probably joined in with allies like the MacDonalds.
But there's a modern one.
Yes, particularly heard in diaspora communities. Mac Omhai's Gu Brath.
MacInnes forever.
Exactly. A real rallying cry of pride and endurance. Very popular at gatherings, especially over in Cape Breton.
Okay, Tartans, always popular. The MacInnes Modern is the official one.
That's the one. Registered and widely recognized. It's got those blocks of green and navy blue with red and black lines running through.
Colors symbolizing things like the forests, loyalty, courage.
Right. Green for Morven's forest, blue for loyalty, red for courage, black for resilience. That's how the source interprets it. It's the one you see for formal kilts and such.
And there's a hunting tartan, too.
Yep, MacInnes. Hunting. It's got more muted, earthy tones, greens, browns. Better suited for informal wear, maybe outdoors. The source notes it's widely accepted, but not officially registered like the modern one.
And sometimes communities create their own unofficial ones. Commemorative tartans.
Exactly. Designs that might mark an anniversary or just express unity within a diaspora group.
Now, this next bit from the source sounds fascinating. Supernatural tales. Seems belief in the otherworldly was quite woven into Highland life.
Oh, definitely. And the source connects some specific tales to Clan MacInnes. First up, the ghost of Butter Castle.
Kinlochlan again. A lady in white.
Believed to be a noblewoman killed during a Campbell raid, seen walking the battlements.
What makes it chilling are the details this source includes: sudden scent of heather, cold spots, sailors reporting sightings from the water below, and the idea she appears before danger.
A very potent legend tied to their main home and their struggles.
Then there's the drowned piper of Lochaline Bay.
A gifted piper lost at sea, but his faint piping is supposedly heard on stormy nights. A lament, maybe a warning.
And that story traveled.
All the way to Cape Breton, the source says. Emigrants claim to hear those same ghostly pipes during storms there too. Speaks volumes about loss, memory, and music.
And the seer of Lawdale Glen, an 18th century woman with the second sight.
Andoshilad. The source really brings her to life. Her pale gray eyes, how she'd refused to enter certain houses because she foresaw tragedy, specific warnings that came true.
Like stopping a wedding because she saw the bride's brother had drowned.
And days later, the news arrived confirming it. Her legacy, even tales of her appearing in dreams, apparently continued in Cape Breton folklore.
The source has a few other strange snippets, too. That Malagawach bell ringing by itself when an elder died.
The legend of a hidden room in Kinlochlan, only discoverable by someone with MacInnes blood.
The spectral white deer of Drimnin, seen as an omen.
Or the singing skull in Nova Scotia, supposedly the spirit of a bard singing during storms. These tales really add a unique layer to their identity.
Okay, moving from ghosts to more earthly conflicts, blood feuds. The force details quite a few, set against that backdrop of the lordship's collapse and Campbell expansion.
The feud with Clan Campbell is described as the most significant and the most painful. It was less about open war, more about the Campbells systematically targeting MacInnes lands in Morvern.
Burning Kinlochaline, forcing families off land, harsh tenancy terms.
Leading to dispossession and deep resentment. That quiet yet painful erasure the source mentions, those bitter stories definitely fueled immigration.
They also had a long rivalry with Clan McClean, neighbors across the Sound of Mull.
Yes, disputes over land, resources, occasional raids. But interestingly, the source suggests that their shared anxiety about the rising Campbells eventually led to a kind of wary truce, even intermarriage. Practicality won out.
There was a feud with Clan McMaster, too, back in the early 1500s.
Over things like hunting rights, chapel lands. It shows how fragile things were as the lordship crumbled. The McMaster name faded in Morvern after that.
And surprisingly, conflict even with Clan Donald, their old overlords.
Yeah, paradoxically, the source says it stemmed from the MacInnes backing the wrong side in a MacDonald succession dispute.
Which led to retaliation.
Swift and harsh, MacDonald's burned a MacInnes chapel, seized livestock, a stark reminder of the dangers of getting caught in the politics of bigger clans.
Then a dispute with Clan Cameron in the mid-16th century.
Over cattle grazing near Lochaber. Led to a skirmish, then a punitive Cameron raid into Morvern, shows the MacInnes vulnerability again.
And sea-based rivalry with Clan Macquarie.
Late 16th century over fishing boundaries near Ardnamurchan. Skirmishes at sea eventually sorted out through mediation.
The source even mentions smaller clashes over ferry crossings with Camerons, grazing rights with McLaughlins, constant friction over everyday resources.
So, from local feuds to bigger battles, the source puts them at Harlaw in 1411.
Fighting alongside the MacDonalds, supporting their claim to the earldom of Ross, a huge bloody battle, Gaelic versus Lowland power, reinforced their role as MacDonald allies.
Then Inverlochy, 1645, during Montrose's campaigns.
Here they fought with Alasdair MacCulloch against the Campbells. A massive victory for Montrose, and the source says it really reignited those old animosities with the Campbells. And Killiecrankie in 1689, the first Jacobite rising.
They rallied to the Jacobite standard again, fighting with MacDonald and Cameron allies. A dramatic Jacobite victory, but their leader Dundee was killed. A huge blow that left them disillusioned, but still loyal to the cause.
Which leads us inevitably to Culloden, 1746. How were they involved there, according to the source?
Well, they didn't have their own formal regiment on the field, but individual MacInnes men definitely joined the Jacobite army.
Mostly fighting with.
Their traditional allies, the MacDonalds, particularly the Keppoch and Glengarry regiments, driven by those old loyalties and deep opposition to the Campbells on the government side.
And the source mentioned something crucial about the MacDonald's position at Culloden.
Yes, they were placed on the right wing of the Jacobite line. Traditionally, they held the post of honor on the left.
And that caused problems.
Big problems. Resentment, confusion. It hampered their charge when the time came. A poorly coordinated attack.
And despite their bravery, the MacDonald ranks, including those MacInnes men, were hit hard.
Very hard. Repulsed with heavy losses by the government troops' devastating firepower.
The aftermath was brutal too, wasn't it?
Especially back in Morvern. The source describes punitive actions, homes burned, cattle seized, even though no MacInnes chief was formally attainted because there wasn't one officially recognized.
Driving more families away, hiding or heading for the New World.
Exactly. And the source emphasizes how oral tradition, especially strong in Cape Breton, kept alive the stories of MacInnes' courage and sacrifice at Culloden.
So their legacy there is one of loyalty, of sacrifice for the cause, even as a smaller clan.
A testament to upholding that ancestral duty against overwhelming odds.
The source wraps up with some wonderful, strange, and unusual facts, little nuggets that really capture the clan's unique flavor.
Like that self-ringing bell in Malagawatch, Cape Breton, said to have rung on its own when an elder died in 1863. Spooky.
Or just their current status armigerous, no official chief, which apparently leads to some fun, informal titles used in the diaspora.
The white deer of Drimnin appearing as an omen. That's very evocative folklore.
And the fact they were one of the few clans whose diaspora, especially in Cape Breton, remained strongly Gaelic-speaking for so long. That's quite distinctive.
The stone that bled in Morvern after a warrior fell. Pure ancient myth, almost.
The singing skull in Nova Scotia, is that the bard spirit again?
That's the legend, singing during storms.
And I like the duel that wasn't. Two cousins, sheep, too much drink.
Showing up drunk, missing completely, then arguing about who was the worst shot. Apparently it even became a Gaelic play. A bit of dark humor there.
And that hint of a possible Viking echo in their crest adds another layer of mystery.
These little facts really bring the history to life, don't they? Show the human side, the quirks.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
which connects nicely to the diaspora and their global reach. As the source explains, this wasn't just wanderlust.
No, not at all. Strong push factors from the late 1700s onwards, landlords consolidating states, the aftermath of Jacobite defeats, and especially the Highland clearances.
Forcible evictions from Morvern or Merchan, lands held for centuries.
Brutal stuff. But they took their culture with them, the language, music, faith, stories.
Nova Scotia looms large again here, Cape Breton especially.
Became a real heartland. The source highlights places like Malagawatch, Mabou, Judique, where Gaelic language and MacInnes traditions really thrived, maybe more strongly than anywhere else outside Scotland for a time. Sealids, piping, storytelling.
But they went elsewhere too, the U.S.
Yes, early settlers in the South, later communities in New England, the Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, active in Highland Games, Scottish societies.
Australia and New Zealand too.
Mid-1800s onwards, mining, farming, contributing to pipe bands, churches, cultural life down under.
The source even mentions a thread in the Caribbean. Jamaica?
A lesser-known connection, often soldiers, planters, tradesmen.
And even Germany today.
A small but active presence, the source notes, with annual gatherings. Quite the global spread.
And keeping it all connected today are the Clan MacInnes societies.
Crucial. The source mentions active ones in Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, Cape Breton, Germany, working on heritage, community, cultural events, keeping that flame alive.
Wow. What a story. We've gone from ancient Dalriada through the lordship, the feuds, the battles, the clearances.
To this enduring global presence. It's a narrative of incredible resilience, adaptation, facing down huge challenges.
And a powerful example of how identity, rooted in kinship and story, can survive and thrive even when the land and the formal leadership structures are gone.
Exactly. That quiet strength, that cultural endurance the source mentioned right at the start.
And just a reminder, everything we've discussed comes from those excerpts of Clan MacInnes from the Ancient Clans of Scotland series. If this has sparked your interest, it really is a fantastic read and, as we said, a great gift. The link's right there in the description.
It dives much deeper than we could here.
Definitely. So here's something to think about as we finish. How does that sense of clan identity, something seemingly tied so tightly to land and lineage, manage to persist so strongly across oceans and centuries?
Especially when the ancestral lands are held by others and the chiefship is dormant. What does the MacInnes experience tell us about what heritage and belonging truly mean in our modern, ever-changing world?
A lot to ponder there. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.